people within the NBA ecosystem refuse to acknowledge the problem, refuse to acknowledge how they were complicit in getting it to this point, and refuse to do anything about it. Instead, they'd rather protect their egos and point the fingers at the fans.
I bet my life I'm a Diceshaker. Electric lights on a skyscraper. It's up and downs for...
Welcome to the Diceshaker podcast. My name is Jordan Brown. I am the host of the Diceshaker podcast. With me, as always, the man behind the scenes, Tyler Hartley. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jordan.
On today's show, we're going to talk hockey. We're going to talk a little Four Nations recap, some fallout from that. We're going to get into some reaction stuff. The NBA media is mad about people being mad about the All-Star game, and it's NFL Combine Week, so we'll get into that a little bit. All right. Four Nations face-off is over. Canada has won, and people are mad at us.
Mad at us, too. I know.
Yeah, it's us. Listen, buddy, you're in this, too. All right? Your face pops up in those clips enough times where they
Absolutely.
got you, too.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
always.
Yeah.
We'll get into... So, last week's episode, obviously, we talked about... it was before the championship game of the Four Nations. We had talked about kind of where our thoughts and minds were headed into that. A lot of reaction to that. We'll talk about the reaction in a minute. First, I did just want to talk about the game briefly. What? First of all, just credit to the NHL. Like, what a sporting event. Like, truly striking gold in terms of taking an event that had, if you just want to look at it from a business perspective, they took inventory that had no value, which was, or very minimal value, which was their All-Star game. Nobody cared. And within a year, they were able to flip it into an incredibly valuable asset for the league that is probably the best thing to happen to hockey in who knows how long, 20 years, whatever time frame you want to pick. So shout out to the NHL for that. Shout out to the teams and the players, because none of that happens if those guys don't decide to care. Guys are literally I think that one of the Kachucks, I think, is out for like the year. I think there was real actual consequences.
Real
to it.
shame too, right?
Yeah,
real
it's tough.
That
Listen,
sucks,
I'd turn injuries off if I could. Unfortunately, I cannot.
It's just not your power. Unfortunately,
If I did, I would do it for the record.
I know you would. You're a good guy.
So Canada wins. McDavid in overtime, very fitting. Obviously, 2010 Olympics gold medal game, overtime. Crosby scores, kind of cements himself as he's here now. He's the face of the league. McDavid now able to do that as well. Wins the big one for the first time in his career. And really, and this was, I think, the best part, was truly just a heartbreaking way for the Americans to lose,
Yep.
which is great. Anytime you have a rivalry in sports and you win, there's two ways you can win, right? You can blow them out of the water and dominate them, right? If we would say we'd won that game 8-2 or something like that, or you can win the tight nail biter that breaks their heart. And both are great, but it's a case by case basis in what you want in certain scenarios, right? Like, there are certain rivalries where the rivalry is never going to fully die. It can never go away. And so having that blowout win is great because you can really set them back years. There were years where Oklahoma fan, they would beat Texas by 40 or 50. And that's not going to do anything to diminish Oklahoma, Texas. That'll always be a rivalry. But that really caused end of the world type situations for Texas, which was great. That was fantastic. That's an added. That wouldn't have been the best way for this game to have gone. It's better that Canada won this tight, because if Canada had won this in a blowout, it would have really set back the Americans, I think, because it would have been too big of a reinforcement of we'll never catch these guys. Now we've got them in that great place where it's
hope.
Where they're we should be able to beat them, but you can't.
Yep.
But every time you get, and that's the most infuriating. That's when you can't get over the hump, and it's they're not that much. But it's they're really they're punching air because they cannot no matter what, right? How many times did they have a chance to win that game? Matthews twice, Brady Tkachuk had a chance, and then just
Bennington just for some reason decides to play good for a second, right?
And so every time now it just compounds on top of itself. So now it's they came into that game thinking this is our chance to finally beat Canada, and it didn't happen. And they're so now the next time they're in that spot, it's just more scar tissue and more trauma and more, and it's wonderful and it's beautiful and I love it. So listen, we've said it many times. Rivalries are what make sports great. Hatred is what makes sports great. Canada USA hockey is now a legitimate, full-fledged rivalry that we'll get to revisit every 2 years for what seems to be the foreseeable future. So,
Yeah.
so that's fantastic. That's awesome. That's a great thing for everybody in both countries to enjoy. Not so much for the Americans because you will continue to lose all of the time. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a kid named Gavin McKenna. He's 16 years old, has 77 points in the WHL right now. So we have the next generation of great players too. So you guys are fucked forever, but that's fine. That's fine. That's why they play the game. So, obviously, last week we talked on the podcast about the games. I said some things. Said some things about the Kachucks. Said some things about hockey in general. I upset some people. I want to say right now, the Diceshaker podcast as a collective, as an overall arching statement, we stand behind everything we said. Stand behind 100% of what we said. And so there were two clips that made the rounds that really got people riled up. The first one was where I said that Brady Tkachuk is the ugliest person on the planet and looks like the monster from the movie Goonies.
Yeah. That upset people.
100% accurate. People got upset about it. People just the dumbest takes on it of like, does this guy not know what he looks like? Yeah, buddy. Takes one to know one. How ugly do you gotta be for me to look at you and go, good Lord? That's how bad that dude looks. And anybody, listen, there are a lot of comments about these guys will fuck you up. These guys, you never say that to his face. You know what? There wasn't one person saying the comparison was inaccurate.
No.
Not one person who said he doesn't look like the monster.
No one
from the
ever,
Goonies.
yeah, nobody said it, and nobody said that he wasn't even ugly. Nobody
right.
disagreed whatsoever. They were just upset that you called it out.
Correct. Which is, again,
is hilarious to be upset about.
And look, like, and then so I went on in the clip. The other thing that got people upset was that I said the Kachucks are fake tough guys, and they grew up rich, and that them making it to the NHL wasn't impressive. Which then, of course, tons of people come in and go, everybody in the NHL is rich, and you still got to work hard. It's like, that's not the point, you morons. And it's like, and again, it's like it's very hard for me because I feel like a lot of these people who had a problem with what I was saying were Americans, and we understand that Americans are one of the dumbest groups of people on the planet. It's a failing education system. It's really not their fault. Years and years and years of a terrible, simple-minded culture has eroded their ability to critically think past like one level of analysis. So golden rule in life is you can't fault dumb people for being dumb. So I can't get that mad at the Americans. It's in their nature to just kind of breathe through their mouth and get things wrong, right? That's just kind of who they are. And so the point I was making was not that they're rich, therefore they're not tough. The point I was making was that they went out of their way to prove, they pre-planned it, got in group text with each other and said, this is what we're going to do to show everybody how tough they are. And if you're one of those people who feels like you need to be the guy who goes out there and shows it and demonstrates it, it's because you know you are not that. Yeah. And the reason they know they are not that is because they know how they grew up. They knew their life was easy. They knew it was country clubs and private schools. That's exactly what I said it was. Yeah. And that's why they did that. And listen, if you think that you know you can be tough as a country club and private school kid, sure, okay, fine, whatever, maybe you can. Why are they so insecure about it? Why did they have to go out of their way to prove it so hard that they're tough guys? It's because they're loser dorks. And look, people got upset about it. People got upset to the point to where. And there are people out there that think we did this. It got deleted on TikTok. It's still up on Instagram. You can go see the clip. But it got deleted on TikTok for bullying, okay? I stuffed those dorks in a locker so hard that all you Americans cried to Instagram, went to Zuck, and was like, Zuck, he's being mean to the Mongoloids. You gotta take it down. And he did. Fine, whatever. I think Zuck runs the other one, right? Not TikTok?
No, yeah, Zuck runs
whatever.
Instagram.
You ran to whoever runs TikTok these days, Elon or whoever, and said we can't do it. Meanwhile, Zuck's actually being cool about it on Instagram. He's letting it rock.
He let it go.
So sorry, apologies to Zuck for the slander.
Yeah, no problem.
But again, just very expected behavior from the Americans. They tried to bully somebody. They got stuffed in a locker, and then they cried that they were getting bullied. So that just is what it is. That's no big deal. Did have a problem with the Canadians, who I was being told we needed to act with class, and we need to be the proper Canadian way or whatever. You people gotta wake up and realize what's going on in the world right now. Class is dead, buddy. Look who's running the world right now.
Yeah.
All right. Like we got no time for class. Everything is a confrontation. Everything is a conflict, including that hockey game. So moving forward, as we go, we're gonna play them again in Italy, and then 2 years. we got to leave the class at the door. All right. If you want to be a classy guy, that's fine. You stay in the back. It's going to be people like me to the front who are ready to fight this war on all fronts because that's what's going to be required of us. Now, the last group of people who I want to talk to, really more is just a warning than anything else, is the fucking hockey hardos who got upset. I didn't know. I said two things in one of the clips. One, I said I didn't know who Brandon Hagel was. Truth. And two, I said that he fought Brady Tkachuk when he actually fought Matthew Tkachuk. Yes. And that was just a very, just a great reminder of that whole experience of those clips blowing up, all the reaction to it, then the game, then more reaction to it. Was hockey is a amazing game. Hockey people are some of the biggest dickheads on the planet. Mm-hmm. And like, it just reminded me of like being in high school. Like you're from like a small town, so I'm sure there's like the AAA hockey players and like the way they talk and the way they carry themselves and like just the most detestable douchebags on the planet. And I feel like a lot of those people were in my comments yelling at me that I didn't know who Brandon Hagel was. Listen, dummies. The whole point of the clip was I don't watch hockey. Tyler doesn't watch hockey. We watch other sports, football mostly. But because of the passion and the rivalry and the hatred that was going on in that tournament, it got us to pay attention to hockey. It made us care, which is where I said I would die for Brandon Hagel. Still would, by the way. That's for life now. For life. Now that I've gone through the trenches with Brandon Hagel, again, Brandon, if you're listening to this, if you see this, brother, you are all good in my books. I apologize for not knowing. I'll never forget who you are now. The hardos got to relax because it's like, people have cared about your game for 2 minutes, man. Yeah. And like already you're doing what are you a casual? All right, well we just won't pay attention then, man. You know what? We'll just go back and do other stuff and leave your little dumb sport where it is. Yeah. Or do you actually want people to pay attention and care? Because if you want people to pay attention, it's not like I said I don't know who Nathan McKinnon is. I didn't say Wayne Gretzky. Who's that? I said Brandon Hagel. Yeah. Listen, I'm in the sports world. I'm around. I know what's going on. Not a household name. No. Just not a household name. So everybody, my warning to the hockey hardos, hockey's having a moment right now. Don't ruin it by being your dickhead selves. And don't make me start caring about your sport. And I got to come back here in 3 months and embarrass all you people because you don't know shit. All right. I'm casually dipping my toes into this. All right. You're talking to a guy who from August through January, I spend 30, 35 hours a week watching football. You think I won't devote that energy to hockey just to put you nerds in a locker? How many people do I got to stuff in a locker? How many nerds are going to, and then I just got to cram them in the locker?
We'll go through 10 TikTok accounts to do this, man.
Listen, so don't make me do it.
We got backups ready.
To the Americans, it's not your fault. You dumb people, it is who it is. To the Canadians, we got to leave that classy shit is over. You guys don't know how to win. You follow me. I'll show you the way. And to the hockey hardos, watch it because you guys are very, very close to the reason why people don't like hockey is you. It has nothing to do with the game. Just understand that. All right. That's the Four Nations. Take a little break now. Come back to you. We'll talk a little NBA. And we're back. Okay. So last week we had talked about how the Four Nations, the round-robin game between Canada and America, went up at the same time as the NBA All-Star game, which elicited a bunch of comparisons about how bad the NHL is kicking the shit out of the NBA on this night. Which then, this past week after the championship game, there was some NBA media people who got very defensive about that whole narrative of the NHL like dunking on the NBA. Very defensive about it. And so a couple of people, first one to talk about is Ryan Russillo on his podcast, The Ryan Russillo Show. Before I go on and say anything, immense amount of respect for Ryan Russillo. He is truly one of the best doing this, works hard, smart, original takes, not afraid to admit when he gets wrong, but doing it a long time. Tons of respect for Ryan Russillo. This is not an indictment of him. It's just something he said that I disagreed with. So he opened his podcast last week talking about the comparison between the NBA and the NHL, and his point was that he didn't think it was a fair comparison, and he made a couple of reasons why. The first thing he pointed to was that basically his argument was that people are comparing like the pinnacle of NHL, where it's a big game with like national pride behind it, and all the players cared and were invested. And then we were comparing that to like the worst week of the NBA season, which is All-Star Week. And he's like, well, you can't compare two products, one at their height, one at their lowest. So that's number one. And then the metaphor he makes is he pointed to the Olympics last year when America played Serbia and they had that crazy comeback, Steph at the end to win it. And he said, one of the best basketball games of all time. And if you had compared that, and that if you had then that same day compared that to Mariners Orioles in the middle of July, you wouldn't then go, well, the NBA is way better than baseball because you're not comparing those things. Okay, so that's his basic premise. Let's say two things about this. Number one, the idea that we're comparing the top of the NHL product to the bottom of the NBA product is true. What he ignored in that is, why is that happening? Why is the best of the NHL going up against the worst of the NBA? Because the NHL was faced with the same problem that the NBA had, which was that we have a dog shit All-Star weekend that the players don't care about and everybody hates, and every year it just gets ripped on. So the NHL did something about it.
Yeah.
And I said on last week's podcast, it's not fair to expect the NBA to they can't just be like, okay, we're going to do the Four Nations now. Because you can't make a one-to-one translation from one. It's not like they can just copy what the NHL did. They're in a tougher spot, no question about it. But to sit there and act like, well, it's not the NBA's fault, it just happened this way. No, the NHL had the same problem, and they came up with a solution. They fixed it. Mm-hmm. And it worked out better than anybody could have hoped. So credit to the NHL for that. The fact of the matter remains, NBA All-Star Weekend stinks. The NBA product overall fans are dissatisfied with, and they're not doing anything about it. They're continuing to throw up their hands and go, well, it's actually not as bad as you say it is. Maybe you just don't like basketball. Okay, fine. So that's number one. Number one, I think he's ignoring the context of why the disparity between the two products happened in the way it did. It wasn't just random. It was the NHL proactively made that happen where the NBA didn't. So that's number one. Number two, he points to the Olympics as like the pinnacle of like, oh yeah, see, like the NBA can have it too. Look what they did in the Olympics. That's not an NBA product. Yep. We're not comparing hockey versus basketball, which is what I think this argument is kind of divulged into, of like the sports. No. We're comparing two brands. We're comparing the NHL versus the NBA. Four Nations was an NHL product. It was put on by them, it was endorsed by them. They got all their players to buy into it. The Olympics is not that. The Olympics has nothing to do with the NBA. It happens when the NBA does not do anything to like the NHL stopped their season for 2 weeks to allow this to happen. The Olympics happen in the summertime. The NBA is not going. It's after the finals. The NBA has nothing to do with the Olympics. And so yes, when you get the best players in the world playing against each other and everybody cares, is the product good? 100%. Absolutely. Nobody's arguing against that. The criticism is that doesn't happen often enough, and you have one league going out of its way to create that sort of environment and one league actively not doing that. Mm-hmm. That's the comparison. That's the issue between the two. And again, is it fair to just tell the NBA will just again? No. The problems that they have and the problems in the NHL, they're not exactly the same. But at least the NHL is doing something. Yeah. The NBA refuses to do anything.
Yeah, the NBA is kind of just beating a dead horse at this point. They just keep doing the same thing that doesn't work.
Right. And so what they're doing, and this will go into the next thing I saw last week that bothered me. So Brian Windhorst, who, again, a lot of respect for Brian Windhorst. I wouldn't necessarily say he's in like the sports media game, because he's more in like the insider reporter, like kind of Shams and that kind of world. He's famously like in like the guy that LeBron trusts. They went to the same high school. Like that's kind of how Windhorst built his career. Was LeBron went to his high school, he followed him the whole way through. Mm-hmm. A lot of respect for Brian Windhorst. He had the monologue last year that everybody replayed after Luka got traded, where he just rips Luka for like basically calls him a loser and says that, if you keep baiting these fouls and crying all the time, like you're never going to win. Great monologue. Nailed it. Very good reporter with great takes. So that's that. Now, they had asked him basically the same question of like, how does the NBA feel about getting stuffed in a locker by the NHL all weekend? And he said something along the lines of, I don't know why the NHL's gain has to be the NBA's loss. Like, I don't know why we're comparing them. And then he went on to say that kind of got some stuff wrong in an attempt to like kind of discredit the NHL, where he said that basically tried to say that, yes, they hit a home run, but it was lightning in a bottle. They can't do this all the time. And the reason he said that is they're not doing it next year in 2026 because of the Olympics. True. They're not doing it in 2027 because of the All-Star game. True. It's coming back in 2028. They're not doing it because they're doing the World Cup. True. Here's the problem with that. So let's attack the first part of the argument first, where he says, why are these things being compared? And I understand what he means. He means why can't you just like hockey? Why does liking hockey mean you don't like the NBA? And that's true. And you don't have to think that. You can like both, and that's fine. But the reality of the situation is they are two brands, two professional sports leagues operating in the same basically the same markets. It's the North American market. If it's not the same cities, it's all in North America, and they happen at the same time. Mm-hmm. So by definition, you're competing. By definition, if there's an NHL game on at 8 and an NBA game on at 8, you're competing for viewers. That just is what it is.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're comparing them, because it's indirect. And when one product vastly outperforms a competitive product, it's okay to comment on that.
Yeah.
It's okay to point that out, that one brand is getting stuffed in a locker. The title of this episode is Stuffed in a Locker, by the way.
Sure. Sure. We'll make a note of that.
So that's number one, Brian. That's why they're being compared. It's not, and I get it. Like, the NBA deals with this thing of there are a lot of people out there who don't watch the NBA, who don't like the NBA, and take every opportunity they can to shit on the NBA because they think it's too woke. And those people are out there. And I think that's the criticism he's fending off, because a lot of the hockey bro stuff comes from a very anti-woke place. Maybe not actually, but that's the perception of it. So he's defending against that. But to act like any sort of criticism of the NBA or any sort of comparison between what the NHL did and what the NBA did comes from that place and doesn't just come from a place of of genuine criticism of the product it's disingenuous at best, and maybe nefarious at worst, where it's you almost seem like you're carrying water for the league a little bit here.
Yeah, I feel like there's criticism going on for a while too. It's just kind of highlighted
Correct.
when you see the success
Correct.
of something else, right?
Correct.
We've all been pissed about the All-Star game for probably since that dunk contest in 2016.
Right.
Probably since then.
Yeah,
for a good 9 years, we've been like, this sucks. This sucks ass.
Right. And same with the NHL. People said that was the whole thing. Is last year it was players got booed and stuff at the skills competition because they were obviously not trying.
Yeah. No, it's an embarrassment.
The NHL did something about it.
Yes.
Whereas the NBA continues to dig in their heels and act like the viewers are the problem. And so, what's the other thing? Oh, and then so when he goes on and said, well, it's lightning in a bottle. It's not something they can replicate. Next year is the Olympics. The NHL is partnering with the Olympics in that, by the way. They're already running commercials with the NHLPA logo right next to the Olympic logo. So it's not like the NHL doesn't have any involvement in that. They do. They're stopping their season to accommodate that. They are going out of their way to make sure that best on best competition, international competition, happens. Mm-hmm. 2027, he said they're not doing it because they're doing an All-Star game. Correct. They are going to bring back the All-Star game every other year. And then he said in 2028, it's not happening because the World Cup is happening. He doesn't understand that the World Cup is run by the NHL. And that is the next step in this.
Yeah.
That they did it with 4 teams, and now they're going to come back in 28, and every 2 years after that, or every 4 years after that, offset the Olympics by 2 years with a World Cup of, I would imagine it's going to be, probably 10 teams or 12 teams or something like that. Much bigger scale.
Yeah.
Right? Similar to what the Olympics is going to be. So to say that the NHL just, they got us this one time, but they can't get us again. No. They have a long-term plan for how they are going to put out a good product every 2 years that people want. And the NBA does not have anything like that. Mm-hmm. And this is where the ultimate point comes in. So there was one more thing that came out that really just kind of hammered home to me what the issue is here. And it was Kevin Durant. He tweeted out early last week, I think, basically saying that maybe some people just shouldn't watch basketball and they should watch hockey instead because it has the things they're looking for, like aggression and loyalty to teams. Players don't move around as much and stuff. Basically saying hey, all you guys complaining about the NBA, maybe you guys should just watch hockey instead. Which, I understand from his perspective of why do I have to keep hearing about this all the time? Get out of here. But if you are Do you imagine being like a business partner of the NBA? You imagine being one of these TV networks or being a major advertiser, and you've got one of the faces of the product coming out and being like, maybe don't watch it then if you have that big of a problem with it. It's like, dude, like that sentiment, that attitude is what is making people upset about the NBA. There is a perception out there, and you can argue whether it's accurate or warranted or whatever. You can make all those arguments. None of them matter because perception is reality, and the perception out there is that the NBA players do not care, and the league itself doesn't care enough to make them care. Yeah. Or doesn't have the power to make them care. Either way. Whereas if you compare it to the thing that the NHL was selling was, look how hard these guys care. And we can see this in actual practical case. The reason the NHL was able to do something like the Four Nations, and the reason they're going to be able to do things like the World Cup in the future, is because they got every single player, all of the best players in the world, to buy in 100%. The NBA could do something like this. They cannot do it exactly, but they could do something like, if you tell me right now, if we said next year, okay, no All-Star game, we're going to have the best international-born players play against the best American players, and maybe we do a 3-game series, or maybe it's 5 games. We figure out something, or maybe it's just one night, whatever. And everybody's going to be bought in, and they're going to be playing like it's Game 7 in the NBA Finals. That would do crazy numbers.
Yeah. That
would do insane, huge numbers.
The same kind of problem. Like, how do you get them to buy in, though? How do we get them to buy in?
Don't. That's why it won't happen.
That's why it won't. Yeah,
that's why it won't
so
happen.
I'm saying, like, I mean, like, it does. It seems like there needs to be some sort of, like, they have to incentivize them some way. I also don't know how you incentivize them.
It's a culture issue. The problem is that, and this is again where this is my overall point of the NBA just kind of being like, it's not our fault. There's nothing we can do about it. And listen, you guys, the reason the NHL stuffed you in a locker, the reason why they put out a product that you can't match is because they can create that level of buy-in from all of their players that this type of game matters. If you try to do that in the NBA, you will never get the best players to play that hard and care that much about a game like that, because the culture has been set by guys like Kevin Durant, like LeBron James, like James Harden, Joel Embiid, player act, whoever you want to say, that trying in these games is not cool. It's the same reason why people are dissatisfied with the regular season product, because the perception out there is that the players don't care, and they don't care enough to play in the game. They don't play defense in the game. They just want to shoot three, whatever it is. And again, you can attack all of that and say, well, that's actually not true, and the players do play more now, and all that's well and good. You may be 100% right about that. The perception is what matters. We're talking marketing right now. And if people think that the players don't care, then it's going to diminish your product. And for the NBA to just sit there and for Russillo and for Windhorst and for Kevin Durant to blame this on the fans and say that the reason people are talking about it is because of the fans, and not look inward, not say, what have we done with our own product and our own culture that has gotten us to this point, is in my opinion, one of the most short-sighted, selfish, indescribably arrogant way of going about this. And it's a problem that the NBA is going to have to figure out how to solve in the future, because clearly anybody who's there right now is not able to solve it.
It's a tough one to come out and say, like, you can't just come out and say, yeah, we know we're fucking up, but we don't have an answer for it yet either. Like, that's a tough stance to take as well. You know what I mean? Like, instead of, like, obviously, like, you not blaming the fans, but I can see why they're like, no, like, there's these problems. Like, this is what you're not seeing, this is what you're not seeing. Like,
Katie could fix it.
What's that?
Katie could fix it.
How?
If Katie said, all right, we'll play this game next year. We'll do it America versus the Internationals. And he got LeBron. If Kevin Durant, LeBron, and Steph Curry said, we care about, it's the same thing with the Olympics. Guys didn't used to go to the Olympics in the NBA either.
Yeah.
And then LeBron and them decided, they lost a couple times or whatever. And then that's why this passed, because LeBron and them decided we're going to care about this.
Yes. Yeah.
And so they will follow suit. If those three people decided this one for the betterment of the league, we will go try and we will go play in this game and care about it, then it would happen. Because I guarantee you the Internationals are down to play it. And they will care. Because they have something to prove.
It's just so interesting to me. It's like, what is the NHL doing differently to make their players care?
Well, it's culture. It's culture.
But I mean, like, it's not. But yeah, it has to be culture. I just don't know how you cultivate that culture. I don't know where that starts.
The NBA, and it might be basketball in general, has a culture of, if you're good, trying is not cool.
Yes.
It's a weird thing where the better you are, the less you should try. The more you try, the less cool you are. And also, and part of it too, is massive ego on these guys. It's not like ego in hockey, right? Again, it's a different sport. One guy can't have the outsized impact in hockey or in any sport that you can in basketball. But these guys don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to go. That's why they don't do the dunk contest. Why has LeBron never done the dunk contest?
Yeah.
Never. Even though he said he would. Multiple times he said he would. Because when push comes to shove, he doesn't want to look like an idiot. He doesn't want to be bad at it. Why do these guys not try in All-Star games? Why do these guys not try in the... Nobody wants to try and then look bad and then get embarrassed. Again, because if they get 30'd by the international team, they can't then come out and be like, it didn't matter.
That's a good point too, and especially because hockey has so much aggression to kind of take up for like the finesse. Like there's so much finesse on the surface level of basketball where it's like it's easy to look like an idiot. It's way easier to look
in
like
basketball.
An idiot. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
Way easier.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. And that's why it's
tough.
It's a cultural issue where if the NBA is, and again, it's because these guys are so important that they have these giant outsized egos that they must protect. And the NHL just doesn't exist like that.
Yeah,
and in any sport, it doesn't exist like that. It only is in the NBA. And again, that's not an indictment of, because this quickly gets into like, the NBA is the black league. And this quickly gets into like, oh, black guys are just arrogant. It's not that. It's the way that like, if you're a star NBA player, your importance, you are so much more important than any other star in any other sport can be, with the exception of maybe quarterback. But even when you're a quarterback, you're one of 53.
Yeah.
You understand that you have the most importance by a long shot, but there's still 53 guys in the room. The NBA is 15-man rosters, 8 of them play, and one guy matters.
That's true. Yeah,
and so if you're, it's just a culture of ego. It just is what it is. And like I said, and it's not an easy fix for the NBA. That's not my point. My point is that Russillo and Windhorst and KD are examples. They're not the only ones doing it. They're examples of how people within the NBA ecosystem refuse to acknowledge the problem, refuse to acknowledge how they were complicit in getting it to this point, and refuse to do anything about it. Instead, they'd rather protect their egos and point the fingers at the fans. We're going to take another break. We'll be back with a little bit of Combine talk. All right, we are back. It is NFL Combine Week. Kind of sneaks up on people every year. I feel like people don't realize that it happens so quickly after the draft. It's one of the reasons that the NFL turned it into, like, the Combine's been happening forever. Really, I would say in the last 15 years, it's become sort of this like event. The NBA or the NFL realized it was just an opportunity for them to create more inventory, get more cameras, occupy more of like the sports ecosystem, and they don't have to wait until free agency to start. The actual event itself, I don't think matters that much. So for anybody, I guess, who doesn't know, Tyler, did you know what the Combine is?
Yeah, I know what the Combine is. Yeah.
So all the draft guys, they go to Indianapolis and they hang out for a few days and they do some drills and they do some interviews and everybody leaves. Nothing that's going to happen actually like on the field during this Combine is really going to matter that much, because all of these guys all have pro days coming up as well. So every school puts on their own like Combine for their own guys in the coming weeks through like mid-March kind of. And so if you have any sort of perceived weakness, so a great example of this is Shedeur Sanders, Deion's kid. Mm-hmm. He's not throwing at the Combine. He's not working out. He's only going to go there and talk to teams. He's going to do everything at Colorado's pro day in a few weeks, where he has much more control over the situation. Sure. It's organized by his school. His school's obviously run by his father. They're going to have their receivers. They're going to show what they want to show. Whereas if you go to the Combine, you're at the mercy of the NFL coaches running the Combine, and you may get exposed. And you see this all the time with different guys, right? Guys don't run 40s. They run at their pro, whatever, right? It really does. Guys don't bench, whatever it is, right? You're going to protect yourself that way, and that's fine. So nothing really on the field is going to impact like anybody's draft stock that much. What's interesting about the Combine, though, is it is the first event. It marks sort of this. This is how quick we're now into the 2025 season, right? Like this is like the first event of the new season. And it's the first time that all of football's decision makers all get into one space for a short amount of time. So we're going to have all the new head coaches, all the new GMs, everybody's going to be there. Free agency's coming up, the draft is coming up, and this is when rumors about who's doing what starts to fly. And it's interesting because you end up in a space where all these rumors start to go, but you also have to understand that we're in the middle of a lying season right now.
Yeah.
With the draft coming up and free agency coming up, it's like a big poker game. Nobody really wants to tell anybody what they're doing, right? So a great example, we'll use the Titans as an example. My favorite team, unfortunately, they do have the number 1 pick this year. And so all the reporting coming into this week so far has been that the Titans, plan A, they would like to trade the pick. They want to trade it to the Giants or the Raiders, who comes up for a quarterback, and we can collect more picks and move back. If that doesn't happen, then they're going to pick Abdul Carter, the defensive end out of Penn State. Okay. But if you're the Titans, if you want to trade the pick to the team who needs the quarterback, you have to convince those teams that you might take the quarterback. Otherwise, why would they trade?
Yeah.
They can sit here and wait. So now you're probably going to see stuff come out this week of, Brian Callahan met with Shedeur Sanders and he loved them. And holy shit, Cam Ward crushed his interview and all that stuff. Maybe it did happen. Maybe it didn't. We don't know. But the point is that stuff like that will get floated so that they call it a smoke screen. So now there's like, oh, well, maybe they are going to stand and pick at the number 1 spot. Maybe we do have to make the trade package better so that we can go up and get them. Right? Or maybe that is real. Maybe the Titans are going to take, it's just this back and forth of the lying versus the real. And so we always end up with some good stories, some good rumors coming out of this week. So that's really what I got my eye on. We'll recap any of those that come up next week. The only one that I think we know for sure that's going to get talked about is the Matt Stafford thing. So I don't know if you saw this, but over the weekend it came out that the Rams have given Matt Stafford permission to seek a trade. Basically saying, you go set it up. Go talk to the teams, and you come back to us with the trade, and we'll let you know if we want to do it or not. And then it came out subsequently after that whatever new team Stafford would go to, he's looking for a contract extension, and he wants to be paid about $50 million a year. People jump out their skin. Oh, my God, $50 million. Go look what quarterback's making. That's top 10 NFL quarterback money. That's what they make. That's what. Now he's 38 years old or whatever. There's that. I understand why the Rams wouldn't necessarily want to give him that kind of that contract right now, right? If you look at how
long is he looking for? Sorry.
Hey, I don't know. Probably another 2-3 years, whatever.
Yeah, it's pretty. I think that's pretty reasonable.
Right, and Stafford is still he's not at the top of his game, but he is still a quarterback that matters. He is a quarterback that you could theoretically, I believe, still win a Super Bowl with. But if you're the Rams and you're looking at it, they already said they're trading Cooper Kupp this offseason, or they're going to look into it or whatever. He already did like the goodbye to LA thing. And the overall I think people have forgotten kind of where the Rams are a Shanahan team, right? So it all comes from Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan, obviously the head coach in San Francisco, McVay being the number 1 disciple of those guys. And the way that scheme operates and has always operated is you're supposed to be able to do it without the star quarterback, right? That's why Kyle Shanahan has said that he spent most of his career trying to get Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
Because Kirk is the ultimate Shanahan system quarterback, because it is just throw the ball where I tell you to throw it, when I tell you to throw it there, and make sure it's on time. Make sure it's accurate.
Yeah.
Kirk do that for you all day long. If you'd like him to do anything else besides that, he can't really do that.
Yeah.
But he can do that for you. And that's their whole deal is you don't have to have the superstar quarterback, because we're going to put a bunch of talent around him, and the scheme is so good that it elevates him, right? And great. Okay, fine. That's what you see with the Rams and Goff, and they make the Super Bowl, and they lose to the Patriots. They scored 16-3 or whatever that Super Bowl was. So then what McVay does is he supercharges that and goes, okay, I see what you're doing. We're going to have the Shanahan offense, but I'm actually going to go get a star quarterback and put him in this offense. And that's Stafford, and that's Super Bowl win, and that's, all the crazy production they've had over the years. But that only works. That only makes sense to do if you feel like your roster is ready to win right now.
Yes.
And the Rams just aren't at that point anymore. Right? That roster is just, they have been the ultimate kick the can down the road team. The fuck them picks. They trade every pick. They trade for Jalen Ramsey, and they traded for other guys that I can't think of right now, but they've traded a bunch of picks to continue to keep this this window open to win. And this seems like their first acknowledgement of the window was closed and we're moving on.
Yeah.
So where Stafford goes, I honestly don't think there's that many landing spots. Some people have said the Titans. That's not happening. Stafford has no interest in going to a team that's not ready to win right now. People have said the Giants. I could see that a little bit more just because of the neighbors thing. The defense isn't bad. Dable's a really good offensive coach. That makes a little bit more sense. They obviously need a quarterback. both New York teams, I guess, could be on the table. There's, people have said the Vikings. I don't know if they're going to kick the can down the road again with JJ. But this is just sort of the sort of thing that we're going to be dealing with over the next sort of the drafts at the end of April. So really once we're through the draft, this stuff is kind of over, I guess.
Yep.
So for the next 2 months, we're kind of going to be dealing with these sorts of rumors. So that's the first one. We'll have more that come out after the combine. But just interesting to see that as the world turns, as the Rams have kind of made this transition into, okay, we have to do things differently now, end of an era, opening of another one. The whole thing just keep rolling on, man. Yeah. That's the NFL's secret sauce. Their secret recipe is it just never ends. We're already into the next season. We're already talking about fits and stuff for games that aren't going to happen now. We got 7 months or whatever until those games start. So as much as we want to talk about the NHL and what they're doing and the NBA and what they're not doing, the NFL is still king and they are still omnipresent, and they like to remind people of that. So we'll have Combine this week. We'll keep an eye out for any fun stories that come out of that, and we'll talk about them next week. But that is this week's episode. Thank you for watching, listening, whatever you're doing. Make sure you like, subscribe, rate us, review us. Quick message. Quick public service announcement. I forgot to do this earlier. So people thought that we took down the one TikTok because we were getting killed in the comments. People were upset about it. We did not take that down. TikTok took it down. Funny enough, TikTok also reached out to me and asked if we needed anti-bullying filters in the comments because people were coming at us so hard. I want to say this one time. We're going to say this unequivocally. Our goal when we post something is for the comment section to be a war zone. Okay? You guys have heard a lot of stuff from a lot of different people about how social media is a cesspool and it's toxic and they don't want their posts, their community to be like that. I'm telling you the opposite. I'm telling you that is exactly what I want you people to do. I want you to understand that if you're going to comment under one of our posts, you have entered a battlefield and anybody can get got at any moment. And it might not be about the comment that we're talking about, all right? My goal, ideally, is that you savages are mixing it up so hard in the comments that we are now 17 degrees removed from what I was originally talking about. That would bring me joy. That would make me happy. I want our comments to be a place where people can come argue about whatever it is that they feel they need to argue about, because that is what being a sports fan is. Yep. It is being in the trenches. It is having an opinion and arguing against people who disagree with you vehemently. And ultimately, that's what we're doing here, and that's what we want. So just a public service announcement that if you are going to be in the Diceshaker comments, you have stepped into an active war zone, and you need to act accordingly. Don't come crying to me because people are being mean to you in the comment section. I told you that's what it was going to be. All right? We're going to have the meanest comment section on the internet. That's a guarantee. Absolutely. Tyler, anything to say?
We just take pride in that. It's good.
Again, we enjoy rivalry. We enjoy hatred. And we enjoy when you guys get in the comments and mix it up. So comment below and let me know why I'm wrong and let me know why I'm dumb or whatever. Make fun of Tyler for not saying anything.
GJ Hawk, that was the best one.
That was a good one. GJ Hawk was a good one. GJ Hawk was a good one. So that's it. That's the episode for this week. We'll catch you guys next week. Thank you.
I bet my life I'm a dice shaker. Electric lights on a skyscraper.